Today I'm taking you through everything I know about propagating Hoya successfully, from how to take the right cutting to my top 3 favorite methods for rooting, all the way to potting up our propagations and helping them thrive. Whether you're brand new to Hoya propagation and you're looking for strong, healthy new roots on your new Hoya babies, or you're a seasoned plant veteran, I've got tips and tricks for everyone, so you're in the right place. Stay tuned. Hey plant fam, welcome back to Shy Girl Plants. If you're brand new, my name is Cheyenne, but you can call me Shy, and I am so glad you're here. Because in today's video, we're gonna be chopping and propagating a couple of Hoyas in my collection, maybe a few more, because I get a little snip happy when I'm propagating Hoya. And I'm gonna take you along for the ride. I'm gonna show you my entire process from start to finish on how I propagate Hoya and what I do to give them the best chances of success and survival and to help them thrive so that we can create new happy Hoya babies. Now, before we get started and dive into propagating, there are a few things that I wanna make note of first. The first thing is that Hoya propagation, or plant propagation, any plant propagation for that matter, is not always 100% successful. And that's totally okay. Sometimes the cutting or the vine that we're working with, the node that we're working with, isn't viable. It could be the conditions it's growing in. It could be an issue with the mother plant that the cutting came from. There are a lot of different variables when we are taking cuttings of plants. And sometimes it just doesn't work out. And sometimes it's completely out of our control as plant parents. And again, that's totally okay. That's part of the process when it comes to propagation and taking care of live plants. And actually those experiences help us to grow and to learn. And that's how we are able to come up with tips and tricks and ways to support cuttings to be successful, right? So I don't want anyone going into it thinking that you're always gonna have success with propagation of any plant, because that's just not true. And again, that's totally okay. I have had my fair share of plants that have unalived themselves, of propagations that did not work, that did not root. And you know what? It's made me a better plant parent, and I'm grateful for those experiences. So if you're brand new to propagation, I want you to know this going in, and be open-minded and be open-hearted and just have patience and know that it's gonna be okay. And also, that's why we take multiple cuttings, to give ourselves a backup plan. You know what I'm saying? The other thing that I wanted to mention before we got started is that everything that I'm sharing with you today are things that I have picked up and developed for myself from my own research, from watching my favorite plant YouTubers, from reading articles, from MacGyvering things and experimenting and lots of trial and erroring until I found a process and methods that I really love and that work for me. That being said, though I'm sharing all this, maybe they're not your favorite methods, or you know of a method that's different from what I'm sharing, and that's awesome. And in fact, if you do have other methods and know of tips and tricks that I don't mention today, definitely throw it down in the comments so that we can all continue to learn and grow together, because that's the whole point, right? But the reason I'm sharing that is because I don't want anyone to think that there is one perfect holy grail way to propagate Hoya, or any plants for that matter, and that this specific way is gonna produce 100% success every single time, because that doesn't exist. And I will wholeheartedly argue that. I feel that there is no right way to do anything as a plant parent, that it is unique to each person and your conditions and your resources, and we can come up with an unlimited way of doing things. So though I'm sharing with you today my favorite methods for rooting and some of my tips and tricks, this is not the end-all be-all. It is just what's worked for me and what I like. And I hope that it inspires you to go and experiment with your own collection, maybe try those out, figure out what you like and what you don't like, and come up with some new processes for yourself. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents about it before we get started. Yeah, just because being a plant parent is not about being perfect. In fact, it's quite the opposite. Everything that grows is unique. The second leaf that comes in on a plant is going to be completely different from the one that came before it. You know what I mean? And sometimes I see things in the plant community on social media like, this is the right way to do it, or what you're doing is wrong. And that's not true. There's no wrong way to do something. Like, you could come up with so many different variations and ways to grow plants, and it's all unique to you. And that's all. I guess that's all I have to say. I just want you to be inspired to go and experiment and try new things and trial and error, and know that you have full reign to create and develop new processes for yourself, and that there's no right way to do it. So there's no perfectionism here. Anyway, that's my little 2 cents about it before we get started. So now let's get started. So here's the game plan for today. Let's go over first the supplies you're gonna need to take cuttings and propagate. I'm gonna walk you through what I do with the cuttings once I take them. There's a little bit of prep work that I do with them. Sometimes I just go straight into potting them up, and that's totally fine too. I'm gonna walk you through my top 3 favorite methods for rooting. The #1 top choice of mine is to pot it straight into my Hoya mix that I mix myself, and we're gonna go through that. I'll share that with you. My second favorite is water. I have a propagation station here hanging up. Water propagations. I have water propagations everywhere in the house. It's just the easiest method. And my third favorite method is in Fluval Stratum, which some people don't like Fluval Stratum, and that's totally fine. I personally really like it. I love it for alocasiacorms, and I love it for propagations of all plants. So we're gonna walk through that as well. Then at the end, I actually have a couple of water rooting Hoyas that need to be potted up. So I'll walk you through that process. If your propagations are already rooted, what you're gonna do to pot them up. And then what I do once they are kind of in their home while they root, to give them the best chance of success and boost that rooting process for them, right? All right, so let's talk about the supplies you're gonna need to start propagating and get these potted up. First thing that you're gonna need is a pair of scissors. Any scissors will do, in my opinion. It could be household scissors, it could be garden shears. These are food scissors, I think. They came in my knife set that I use in the kitchen. I think they're for food, but I use them for plants. Any scissors will do, so long as they are sharp and they are not dull. When we are taking our cuttings of plants, we wanna make sure that we get a nice clean cut. We don't wanna have to hack away at it and make it, uneven or anything. The next thing you're gonna need is something to sterilize your utensils with. I highly recommend this when we are taking cuttings, because once you cut into that plant, that is now basically an open wound. So we wanna make sure that what we're using is sterile, so we can eliminate the possibility of bacteria or infection getting into that plant cutting and possibly leading to root rot. So I have a spray bottle here of half water, half 70% isopropyl alcohol. That's it. It's a 1-to-1 ratio. And we're going to use this to spray down our scissors every time we take a cutting, so that we can make sure our utensils are clean and not, spreading any possible infection or anything between each plant and each cutting. So there's that. I also have some paper towel. So as we spray down our utensils with each cutting, we'll wipe that down. Next thing you're gonna need is something to pot your propagations into. If I am potting directly into my Hoya mix, which I most often will do, that's my favorite way to propagate Hoya, I will use little pots. There are little nursery pots like this. This is like a little 2-inch clear pot. I think I got this from another plant and I saved it to reuse it. But more often than not, I use little plastic cups like this that I get off of Amazon. And I poke holes in the bottom using my soldering iron. And I will move the camera down when I start taking cuttings, so that you can see up close and personal everything that I'm doing, and I will show you these cups. These are reused. I've used these for other things. I try to reuse as much as possible, so I use these cups more often than not. That's what I'm using. However, I did get in some fun new supplies recently, and I'm gonna try out some new pots that I got. I have this cute little 20-cell seedling tray set. It comes with 20 2.2-inch square clear pots, which is really fun. I'm gonna use this for the Hoya Propagations. It has a little tray to hold all 20 of these square pots, which is really fun and convenient for carrying around, especially watering. That's super nice. And it comes with a little tray in the bottom, so if I don't feel like taking it to the sink, or if I'm watering it, then the tray will catch the water. So that's really fun and convenient. I got this from the Tolly shop on Palm Street. I will link that down below so you can check that out. But actually the seller, or the owner of that shop, Lisa Tram, she's actually local to me, so I order from her directly. And I get all of my pots from her. So I get nursery pots from her. If I'm buying nursery pots, I get all of my self-watering pots from her. So like these black self-watering pots that I use, I get them from her. She sells them in 3, 4, 5, and 6-inch, I believe, pots. And then she also has some other self-watering pot options as well. There's black, there's white, there's green. There's some other styles of self-watering pots. So I get all that from her. She is a small business and there's no like sponsorship or anything here. I just truly love her and I love her shop, and I've been ordering from her for a long time. So anytime I get to shout her out and grow her business, I'm gonna do it. She has great prices and great stuff, and through her Palm Street store, she's able to ship everywhere. So if you're in the US, I don't know if she ships internationally, but at least if you're in the US, you can order from her and she'll ship to you. But I get all my stuff from her, so I'm trying this out. She had this for sale and I'm excited to use it for my Hoya Propagations. And this is also super convenient because as a vendor, when I sell my plant propagations, this is so nice and cute to bring with me to a plant show. Speaking of which, my next vendor market is coming up on Sunday, October 19th. It will be at Pizza Port Bressi Ranch in Carlsbad, California. I believe that's San Diego County. So if you're in that area in SoCal, do come and say hi, get some Hoyas from me. What I'm propagating in today's video will be for sale there. So that'll be really fun. And I'd love to say hi. So if you want to come and say hi, that'd be awesome. I will post more about it on my Instagram, so check that out. But in any case, pots. We need some pots to pot up our propagations. That's if you're going straight into a soil mix. If you're going to do something like Fluval, which I'm going to show you today, I still use these clear pots like this. I just don't poke holes in them. I just make sure they are solid. With Fluval, you don't need drainage for that. And then if you're going to go the water route, you can use a propagation station like I have here. There's so many different varieties of propagation stations. You can use mason jars. You can use a plastic cup, whatever you want to do, just a vessel to hold your water propagation. The next thing that you're going to need are some propagation pins, especially for Hoyas. I will show you a close-up of these because I have some really fun ones to show you. But these you can get on Amazon. They're relatively cheap and they come in big packs. But this is what you use to hold down your propagation in the soil mix or in the Fluval so that they don't pop out, because with Hoyas sometimes it gets a little tricky. I'm super excited for my propagation pins because along with these cool pots that I got from Lisa and her shop Tolly on Palm Street, I got these cool Halloween pop pins. Look, there's like ghosties, there's a pumpkin, there's leaves. I'll show you a close-up when I move the camera down, but I'm super excited to use these and feature these at my next plant market, which is Halloween themed. So that'll be super fun. So you'll need some of those. It's not required, you don't have to have these, but they do make it really helpful to hold your propagations in place. Is that everything? I think that's all we're gonna need. So let's get to chopping. Alrighty friends, so let's get started. The first thing that we're gonna do is sterilize our scissors. So I'm gonna take my alcohol spray and I'm just gonna generously spray these down on both sides, okay? We're gonna take our paper towel and we're just gonna wipe them down. That's all. And we are gonna do this in between every single cut. I know that's redundant, but again, we wanna make sure our cutting, all of our cuts have the best chance possible at success. And this is just good practice to make sure everything is clean and sterile. So the first one that we're going to chop is this very unruly Hoya Bonnii Splash. This is the main plant here, which is super fun. It is super pretty and so big. I'm actually going to cut it all the way down here. I didn't trellis this plant in time, and not that I don't want it to be long or anything, but I have a lot of really long Hoya that I didn't really get to trellis. So I'd rather chop it and keep it small to fit in my cabinet and just have a little bit more space. And as it grows out again, I'll re-trellis it once we get it growing. But I also thought this would be a really fun plant to have available and to share cuttings of. So we're gonna chop this entire vine. So when we're cutting a Hoya, what I am looking for is a good healthy vine, of course. And one of the awesome things about Hoya, unlike some other plants, as most plants you need a node, right, for the plant to activate and then for new growth to come from. With Hoya, they actually root all along the vine. So if you look at this section of vine right here, you'll notice these little points coming out of the plant. Hopefully you can see them. These are, wow, there's cat hair everywhere. I'm sorry, y'all. These little points are going to be root points. So the Hoya will root all along the stem. It doesn't have to come from a node like a philodendron or a monstera. You're going to cut it and the whole vine is going to root. Then wherever you cut it, the next set of vines will come from that node area. So when I'm cutting my Hoya, I want to take the cut right above or right at the end of the plant. So if this two leaf is going to be the top of my cutting, then I am going to cut right all the way down here as close as possible to the last set of leaves that it came from, and then right above there. So let me show you what I'm talking about. So let's cut this from the main plant first. This is going to be as close as possible to the last set of two leaves. Nice, there we go. So we have, let me get this out of the way now. So we have this long vine that we're going to work with. So we have this cutting here. Oops, I moved the table. And now what I'm going to do is I am going to cut it again right above these two leaves here. So I'm going to take my scissors, I'm going to get as close as possible to this next set of leaves here, and I'm going to cut it right at the bottom. There you go, clean cut. All right, so this is our cutting. Ta-da! So by cutting it like this, obviously we have a nice long stem to be potted or to put into a water propagation or whatever we want to do. And then from this section up here, where the next two leaves are, the new vines will come out from this area, from in between there. I don't know the correct terminology to share with you, but that's where it'll come from. So this is a good little cutting for us. Now this stem is actually pretty long, so I could even cut this down a little bit more if I wanted to. I am going to. Okay, that's great. So now we have this. This will be our cutting. So we'll pop that down and it's looking good. So now with the rest of the vine, we're going to continue that process. So I'm going to do the next cut right here as close as possible to the next leaf, because you don't need anything above it. Now, I know with plants like philodendron or monstera, you actually want to be like in the middle, right? Because you want to give it a little bit of extra leeway, the cutting on those types of plants in case they rot. But with Hoya, it's a little bit different. You really just need the bottom vine and you don't need any extra coming up from the top. So I get it as close as possible to that leaf so that it looks exactly like this. And then this vine will get potted down into whatever substrate of choice. And then if you can see these little points here, some roots will grow along the vine. So it doesn't come from here, roots. I mean, they can, but that's not where, you know, the only place where they'll come. So we're going to continue this process here. So this is the last one, the top cutting. I'm going to leave the vine on top intact and let it grow like that. So here we are with our Bonnie Eye Splash cuttings. This one's a little long, so I'm just going to trim it a little bit. That's good. This one too is a little bit long. Let me trim that. I always, when I'm taking my cuttings, I always cut at a 45-degree angle. I remember seeing something somewhere about why that is helpful and beneficial, but I don't remember now why. I just continue to do that anyway. So take your cutting at a 45-degree angle. I don't know why. If someone remembers why, throw it down in the comments below. Anyway, here are our Bonnie Eye Splash cuttings. Oh, this one's super long too. Let me cut this. Great. Okay. These look fantastic. And let's continue our chopping of more plants. Hey friends, okay, I moved the camera around so much because I was struggling to see what the heck I was doing on the viewfinder, and like I want to make sure you're actually seeing what I'm doing. So hopefully this view is okay. So as I was saying, we did the Bonnie Eye Splash. Hopefully that video turns out okay. But the next one I'm gonna cut is the Hoya verticillata Silver Heart. I have this little runner here that I didn't trellis. So I'm actually gonna cut this. Now, if you can see it, right here, a new vine has started to grow. So I'm actually gonna take the cut right here, and then anything above that, we're gonna go ahead and propagate that. So the first thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take my clip and move it down, because this is gonna be the new top part of that. I already went ahead and sterilized these in between moving my camera around. So from here, we're gonna get as close as possible to the last set. And choppity chop, that's it. So this one's good. I'm gonna leave this alone now and let this one grow some more. That's fine, I'll let the vine grow. So that one's all chopped. So now we have this nice, beautiful vine of verticillata silver hearts that we're gonna cut. And we're gonna repeat the process. So I'm gonna cut it. Next one. So this is a Hoya Silver Dollar. Again, I have a long little runner that I'm gonna propagate. So I think I'll start from over here, and then these two sections I'm going to propagate. This one's cool. It has 3 leaves coming out of the top, which is fun. And then it looks like there's another little growth point here coming in. So we'll have more growth there as well. Right here as close as possible to the last set of leaves. Done. Good. Awesome. And so this last top cutting, since this is the top cut, I'm gonna leave that upper vine alone, and then we're good to go there. So now we've got a couple of these ready to go. Woohoo! And this one's a good example of the vine, of how it has little spots where it'll root from. So that'll be really awesome. All right, and then the last plant that I'm gonna propagate, for now, maybe I'll prop more, I don't know. But the last one is gonna be this Hoya Fishtail Albo, or Polyneura Albo. I have not liked the way that it's been growing. It's gotten some yellowing in the leaves, and I think I just want to restart it. I also really want to have some of these available for sale at the plant market, my next plant market. So I'm going to propagate, I think, this big vine here. And it looks like there's growth here. Yeah, I'm probably going to propagate these two. So here we go. Done. So that'll be one propagation. So I'm going to leave this section here alone, and then the rest of this we're going to propagate. So I'm going to cut it as close as possible. That works too. Okay, let me move this out of the way. And so for the Polyneura Albo, I'm actually going to keep 2 nodes on each vine. So I'm going to take the middle cut right here. Yay. So here we go. We have 2 4-leaf sections, 2 node sections. There we go. So that's the Polyneura. Yay! So now we have our cuttings. So one thing I want to point out with Hoya cuttings is that when you take these cuts, you may notice that there is a sap that comes from where you took your cuts. So there's some here, there's some here. Some Hoya have clear sap. Most of them have white milky sap, that color. That's totally normal. So don't be afraid. What I want to say with that is, you know, as I mentioned earlier, when you're taking your Hoya cutting, this is now a fresh open wound. And you can go right into potting it up, straight into a substrate, putting it in water, into Fluval, what have you. But that does give you a little bit more risk of introducing bacteria to this cutting. So what I recommend and what works for me is I allow my cuttings to callus over for at least a couple of hours or overnight. And yes, they will last overnight without water or anything like that. And so by allowing this open wound to harden off and callus, that kind of helps the plant not take in any bacteria and stuff once you introduce it to the substrate in which it's gonna grow. So I'm gonna let these sit for a couple of hours, and then I'll be back to show you what I do with the cuttings. And this is like a couple hours later or the next day. However, I will also say that there are times when I just kind of give these a wash and pot them right up, so that's totally fine too. And I've had success doing it that way too. But if we're wanting to know how to eliminate the most risk, definitely let them callus over a little bit. And that goes for other plants too. You'll want them to callus over and harden off before you go ahead and plant those. So I'm gonna wait a little bit, let these callus off, and then I'll jump back on with you. Hey plant fam, I'm back. It's been a couple of hours. That gave my husband and I plenty of time to have dinner and kind of wind down from our day. And it also gave our Hoya cuttings a good couple of hours to kind of callus off and let those cuts harden before we put them into substrate or to water or what have you. And just to show you, so for example, there's no more sap secreting from the vines, and this is kind of hardened off a little bit. The Hoya polyneurus had some of that milky white sap coming out of it, and so this is now like hardened off. There's no more sap coming out. So this is good practice just to make sure there's no bacteria that gets into that cut, just to be a little extra safe. And again, you don't have to do this, but I think it works really well. I recommend that for other plants as well, like Monstera and Philodendron. I definitely let them callus a couple of hours before I go and pot them or put them in water so that they can root. So the next thing that we're gonna do is we're gonna take these Hoya cuttings over to the kitchen sink, and I'm gonna bring you with me, and we are just gonna wash these down really, really good. This is just good practice to make sure there aren't any lingering pests that we may not know about. Sometimes I will even treat them. I make an anti-pest leaf shine with neem oil and Castile soap as the main ingredients with some other magical stuff in there. And I use that as a preventative with all of my plants, and it's also really good to make sure leaves stay clean so that they can photosynthesize and absorb as much light as possible. So sometimes I'll treat them with that. You could also treat it with just Castile soap and water. I've done that before where I'll just fill the kitchen sink, add a little Castile soap, and let the cuttings soak in there for a little bit. But washing them down is perfectly fine. You also don't have to do that step. I just like to do that step, so I'm gonna bring you with me to do that. Hi, Farfalli. Hello. Are you gonna help me? Okay, is it ready? Are you ready to wash our Hoya cuttings? Farfalli. Are you ready, Mama? Okay, it's time. You're so good. You're so helpful. You're so helpful, Mama. What happened? Did you get stuck? Are you gonna help us? That's so sweet. Are you the supervisor? Are you making sure things are done right? Or you just want treats, sis? Love you. I love you. All right, so as I'm washing down my Hoya cuttings, I am very gently, but also very thoroughly, making sure I just wipe down both sides of the leaf and the stems, just to make sure there's no pests that I didn't know about lingering, and just, you know, keeping safe practice to keeping these clean. The other reason that I do this is because I use something called Grow Safe. It's a biopesticide. It is a milky liquid that you mix with water. It's like a concentrate thing. and it is a mixture of like oils and stuff that work really well on mites of all kinds. And you mix that and you put it in a spray bottle and spray it all over the plants. And when you do that, it actually leaves like a really sticky residue on the leaves, which helps trap the mites and stuff. So because of that, the residue is on some of my Hoyas. So I just like to clear that off once I'm taking cuttings and propagating them, because eventually they're going to get treated again, or I might spray it down with my anti-pest leaf shine or something like that. And so I'm just getting off that sticky residue that's on my cuttings. Again, it's also just good practice to keep them clean, and you can treat them however you want to treat them. If there's a process that you have for treating or taking care of your leaves or keeping them clean, then by all means do that. And again, this step isn't mandatory or anything. It's just something that I like to do, and it makes me feel like my plants are well taken care of, and I want to make sure those leaves are clean. So just good practice, I guess. So the next thing that I'm actually gonna prepare, since I'm already over here at the kitchen sink, is I'm actually gonna prepare my Hoya mix that I'm gonna use for most of these propagations. So when I am potting up Hoya cuttings directly into my Hoya mix, I will actually water it through with Super Thrive so that it is pre-soaked with this. And Super Thrive is a really good vitamin solution used for plants. Typically, when plants need rehab, if they need a little bit of love, they need some extra cushion, to kind of get back on their feet. So I use it when I am propagating Hoya, especially potting up, cutting straight into substrate, because I feel that it gives them a little extra nutrients to help with the shock of being cut and being transferred over. So what I'm gonna do is I have my Calypso watering can, which is so stinking beautiful. Isn't it awesome? I love this thing. I'll link it down below if you're interested in checking them out. I discovered them randomly and I love their watering cans. So this is a 1.5 liter, and you really don't need much of Super Thrive in there. So I already have water in here. So what I'm gonna do is you just use the cap. I'm just taking literally just a little bit, and I've used most of this bottle, so it's almost empty. But I'm just taking a little bit of a cap full, as you can see here, and I'm gonna toss that into my can, and that's literally it. So this is my Hoya mix in here, and this little plastic container, I think I got it from Target or Amazon or something, but I poked holes in it with my soldering iron in the bottom, so it's kind of like a strainer, I guess. And this is what I use to soak through my Hoya mix. Now, what is in my Hoya mix? This is a mixture of New Zealand tree fern fiber, cocoa chips, cocoa coir, perlite, and I've got some charcoal, a little bit of worm castings, and some vermiculite in here as well. This is something that I've been playing with recently. I used to just do cocoa chips, cocoa coir, perlite, but I've actually been really liking this. It has a little bit more nutrients in there to help our Hoyas grow. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my can, now that it has Super Thrive in it, and just slosh it around a little bit. Don't make a mess like I did. And we're simply just going to water it through and just moisten it a little bit. I typically will run the entire can through here to make sure it is very well saturated. And we'll let it drip through as well. I'm gonna mix it up a little bit. Yay, that's pretty good. That's pretty soaked. So I think I will stop there. We really just want all of the substrate to be well moistened. We don't want it to be super sloshy and super, you know, drippy or anything. That's why I use my little MacGyver strainer thingy to let out all that extra moisture. But this also helps when you're potting Hoya propagation straight into substrate because it holds the cutting better than with dry substrate. I feel like it'll plop out a little bit. So having it wet is a lot more pliable. Like you can kind of shape it and make sure everything stays secure. So there we go. That is well moistened now and ready to go. So the next thing that we'll do is we'll transition over, and I'm going to start potting some of these up. And also, I took these cuttings off camera, but I have a Decidia ovata watermelon. These are a bunch of cuttings of like vines that I did. And I'm gonna pot these up in Fluval with you because I feel like the more small leaf and like thinner vined Hoyas are a little difficult to keep in substrate like my Hoya mix. So these do really well in Fluval, but you can also do it in substrate too. But these are gonna get potted in Fluval, so we'll also do those. Anyway, let me transition over and then let's get potting, y'all. All right, y'all, so let's get to potting up our propagations, either in Hoya mix or in Fluval Stratum or in water. Now, since I have some Hoya that have already rooted in water in my prop station there that I do want to pot up, I'm gonna save that for last. Plus, water propagation is the easiest method because you just put it in a vessel of fresh, clean water. That's it, and you let it root. But we'll take a look at that at the end. I think the first thing that I'm gonna pot up is the Decidia ovata watermelon. I want to put all of the cuttings in 1 cup of Fluval Stratum. As I mentioned at the sink, that's kind of what I do with the really smaller leafed or like thinner vined Hoya, the ones that get really stringy and that can hang over, because they can be a little difficult to keep in place when you're potting it into a substrate if it's not like rooted already. So I'm going to show you how to do Fluval with those. I have a couple of clear cups here that I'm going to use. So when I use Fluval Stratum, and if you've not used this before, Fluval Stratum is actually an aquarium substrate. It's a bioactive substrate that's used in fish tanks and stuff. And I mean, if live plants were potted in the aquarium, this would be a great substrate for that. And I don't know who figured it out or thought of it, but someone figured out that this is really good to use for plants and for propagating. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a little bit of Fluval in. We're going to try this size cup first and see how it goes. I'm going to put a little bit in the bottom. It's about like a little under half. And we're gonna put all of the Decidia ovata cuttings in there, and then we'll fill it with Fluval. And there's a good amount in here, so I might maybe have to separate these out. I was using one of my dirty self-watering pots for this because I ran out of vessels apparently. So, all right, so here's our cup of Fluval, and I'm gonna try to organize these one way or another. And so the reason I'm putting a bunch of these in 1 cup is because they just need to root. So this is one thing that I'll do. Okay. And then once they have rooted is when I'll take them out and pot them up separately. So it's kind of like if you were to put them all in water, the end result would be the same. We just want all of them to root together. Oh, this is 1 single cutting, so I'll pot this up by itself. But yeah, you just want them all to root. So we'll try to put them all in there nicely, figuring out which was the top and which was the bottom side. I'm gonna go with this one as the bottom. And it doesn't have to be arranged perfectly or anything, just so that the bottoms of the vines are in the cup and in the Fluval so that they can root. That everybody? Okay, this is the last one. All right, let me take a look at that. Okay, so this has all the vines in, all the bottoms of the vines are there inside the cup. So now, I know it looks like crazy, but I'm just gonna take Fluval and fill that up. Similar to if you were potting something up in pond, you might have to tap it to get things to settle in the bottom there. Oh, that one didn't stay in. Let me see if everybody else is in there pretty well. Maybe. Nope. Okay. That was a fail. Might be overstuffed. So I was having a hard time getting these staying in the cup. So I just cut off the bottom sets of leaves, and that's totally fine, to give the vine a little bit more room to stay in the cup of Fluval. Sometimes you have to do that. You can trim off the bottom sets of leaves so that it fits better in your propagation vessel. Okay, here we go. So you want to make sure that the vines are deep enough in there that when you fill up the cup, they stay in place, right? So that should be good. And there's really no right or wrong way to do this. As you can see, it's kind of like a clumsy thing, and there's no perfect way to do this, so don't feel like there's some magical, beautiful way to do it. Okay, cool. So all the vines are in there. Hopefully you can kind of see those peeking out on the sides. So the Fluval's filled up. Those are in place. So I have a little bit of water. Super Thrive water. There we go here. And I'm just going to fill the cup up to the top. You don't want it to be overflowing or anything. You want to just make sure all the Fluval is wet. There we go. So when I fill up my containers with Fluval, I just fill it right underneath the top, and you can see the water level here. So how is this going to work? That's literally it. So now we're just going to leave this alone to root. I would recommend putting it someplace with high light and high humidity while they are rooting. Same goes for these, and I'll show you how I do that. But with Fluval, what's really convenient is it works very similar to semi-hydro, where you just have to make sure that there is always water available in the vessel that the plant can draw from, and the roots will want to reach down into that water to grow. So therefore, Fluval Stratum is actually a really great substrate to use if you are transferring over to a semi-hydro substrate like leca or pon, because it's basically the same thing, so the plant is prepared. Whereas if you were taking something that was potted in a soil mix, for example, that would have to be transferred over to semi-hydro later if that's what you wanted to do. So that might take a little bit more time because you'd want to have to transfer it to water or, you know, slowly acclimate it over to a semi-hydro setting. So Fluval is really great. I love it for Hoya. I feel like they root really well in it, but the reason that I like it so much is because it's really easy once they've rooted in Fluval to transfer them over to pon, which is my main substrate of choice aside from like soilless mixes like this. So that's it for this guy. It's gonna go, I have a high humidity cabinet that sits at like 80% humidity and like 70 to 80 degrees. So this is gonna live in there until we get some roots on it, and I will keep you updated on this cute little Distigia ovata watermelon that look like little watermelons. Lovely. I'm gonna move this to the side so it's out of the way. Okay, so for the next set of propagations, I'm gonna use my little new seedling cell trays for this. Actually, some of these are a little bit longer and bigger leafed, so I am still gonna use some of my little plastic cups that I like to use. But for the most part, I'm going to try to use these seedling cell trays. But after I was thinking about it, these are actually the perfect size for alocasia pups. I have a bunch of alocasia corms growing right now, and I feel like these would be the perfect fit for when I'm ready to transfer those over. So I'm going to save a couple of these for that. But a few of these Hoyas I am going to use those for, and then the other ones I'll use these little clear cups that I like to use as well. Okay, so one supply item that I forgot to mention in the beginning of the video was rooting hormone. If you are potting your fresh cut Hoya propagations directly into a soil or soilless substrate, and I'm going to show you how I use this. This is Garden Tech Root Boost. I got it from Amazon. It was really inexpensive. You can also get these at your local garden store or someplace like Home Depot and stuff. They'll have it. I haven't done too much work with like experimenting with rooting hormones and finding out which one is the best and stuff like that. There are definitely some more expensive ones, but I just got a really, really cheap one and it works fine. Like, I think it's fine. I get roots propagating this way and I'm happy with it, so I'm gonna keep using this. So let me get my hair out of my face. Let's start with the Hoya Polyneura because they're my favorite and they're so cute. And I think I'm actually going to angle the camera down more so you have a better focus on this. All right, cool. And I almost forgot my Halloween propagation pins, so I have these ready to be used as well. I'm going to take some of them out of these little pouches and show you these because I'm obsessed with them. Look at how cute these are. So we have a ghost, we have the pumpkin, we have some fall leaves. There's also a star in here, and I love the colors, just the purple, the orange and the gold and the white just speaks to me. It says Halloween and fall vibes, which is, I'm all here for it. So, sorry, my mat's a little messy. All right, so the first thing we're gonna do is we are going to take our Hoya cutting, whichever one you wanna start with, and we are going to dip the ends into the rooting hormone. Now you can pour some out onto a bowl or something. I literally just take the end of the cutting and I'm just gonna, this is really hard to do, but I'm just gonna dip it in the rooting hormone just really well. Make sure the end is coated. It doesn't have to be a crazy amount or anything, just enough to be all over the end stem that you're gonna plant into your pot, okay? So from there, now that that's got some on there, we're gonna take a little bit of our Hoya mix and put it in the bottom. And when it is wet and pliable like this, you do want to not make it super, super packed in there that it's so tight, but you do want to pack it down a little bit and just make sure it's filling all the space. Sometimes what I'll do is I'll start like that with just a little bit or like halfway, put the cutting and then fill the rest of the way. Or you could also pack the entire thing and poke a hole and get the cutting to go down in there. I'm gonna fill it all the way and then show you how to stick the stem down in there. And you do wanna fill it all the way to the top. Great, so that's where we're at. So now I'm just gonna use my finger to start a little hole in the center. And this gets a little messy, but we're gonna wash these off again at the end. And I'm gonna stick my cutting down in the center. And then I'm going to press in the substrate all around your cutting so that it's down in there nicely, okay? Pat it down, awesome. So this one's pretty good, but I do want to have little Halloween-y propagation pins. Hey plant fam, it's Editing Cheyenne here with you. I found out that my microphone died in the middle of filming this section, so I'm going to narrate the rest of this clip and then the audio will come back in later in the video. So what I was saying before the audio cut out is that this Hoya Polyneura cutting is actually pretty snug in its pot, but I really wanted to utilize my Halloween prop pins, so I'm going to go ahead and do that. So what I'm doing is I'm making sure both of those prongs are on either side of the Hoya leaves so that when I push it down, it is pushing the node of the vine into the substrate. This makes sure that the Hoya cutting is secure in the pot. As you can see here, I'm going to hold it by the plant itself and it is not going anywhere. So that is good and secure. This helps especially with Hoya because sometimes their leaves kind of grow funky. They could grow down. And when you try to pot it up, they prevent it from staying nicely in the pot. So propagations are super helpful to keep those in place. The next thing that I'm going to do is repeat this process for the rest of these Hoya cuttings. These cuttings I am actually bringing with me to my next vendor market, which is why I prefer to pot them up straight into my Hoya mix, and also because I really love propagating Hoya this way. I find the most success with propping them straight into my Hoya mix, and it's just really fun to do it that way. So I'm going to repeat the process for all of these. I'm going to take my next cutting, which is the Hoya verticillata silver heart. I'm going to dip the vine end into some rooting hormone and make sure that it has a nice coating all around the vine and the part that's going to go into my Hoya mix. Once we have a generous coating of the rooting hormone on that tip of the vine, I am then going to stick that down into my Hoya mix substrate and make sure that it's secure in there. Now, this cutting is a perfect example of when we would use a propagation pin. As you can see, those leaves had grown parallel to the vine. So as I tried to stick it down into the pot, the leaves kept pushing the whole cutting out of the pot and it wasn't really
definitely staying or being secure. So I had to do a little maneuvering here to make sure that everything fit down there nicely. And then I'm going to use one of those prop pins to make sure that the hole cutting is secured with the vine down in the substrate so it can start rooting, and also so that node where those two leaves are coming from are secured to the top of the substrate there. Now I know I moved the leaves around a little bit and they got reoriented as I put it down. That's totally okay. Now that it's going to go under a grow light, the vine and the next leaves that come out are going to be oriented properly. The reason those leaves were growing parallel is because I didn't trellis it or anything, so it just grew like that. And isn't that so cute? Those propagation pins came out so well. I think they're so cute. I'm obsessed with them. The ghosts are definitely my favorite, and this cutting is now ready to go. So what I'm going to do now is continue the process for the rest of these propagations, and I will meet you back at the end.
Ooh, that took a little bit of time. I have taken all of our newly potted Hoya over to the sink to get rinsed down since they were a little dirty. That's the one downfall to potting with a moist substrate, is that it does get everywhere, but nothing that you can't wash off, right? So they're over at the sink right now getting a little bath time, and I'm letting them drain out over the sink. And so while we do that, we're going to pot up these two Hoya albos. These have been water rooting in my water propagation station. So we have some really nice, lovely water roots that have grown in. Another great thing about water propagation is that that is a perfect transition to a semi-hydro setup. So these would do really well if I was going to pot these up into pon or leca, but since these are going to go to market, I am going to pot them up in my Hoya mix, and that's totally fine too. So potting up a water propagated plant, it's really going to be the same thing. We're going to put some substrate, we're going to put the cutting in there with the roots in there, pack it all down, and voila, that's it. The only little extra boost that I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a little bit of rooting hormone. I'm going to sprinkle it in to the cup with the substrate, and then I will water it through with my Super Thrive water, and that goes for all of the cuttings. They're all going to get watered through after being potted up with Super Thrive. Let them be. Then they're all just going to get watered like normal with normal water. After those roots start to show up on the side of the cup, that's when I will start to introduce fertilizer to it. I just use Super Thrive Foliage Pro and mix that in with my water along with some silica, and that's really it. That's all I use. Anyway, here we go. So we're going to put some substrate in the bottom of the cup here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to sprinkle a little bit of rooting hormone down in there. Great. And now we're going to take our rooted cutting and make sure it gets down in there. There we go, that's perfect. We don't want it like all the way down to the bottom, but we do want it to be secure. So the roots are in there in a good spot. And now we're just going to pack up around the plant. For a plant like this that is tall and already vining pretty well, for this I would want to give it a stake or some kind of trellis to go with it. But I actually don't have any small little stakes right now. I need to get some. So when I do get some, I will put like a clear stake on it just to hold this in place a little bit more before I bring it to my vendor market. It also adds a nice little touch, I think, when there's a stake with it. And voila, that's it. She's ready to go. All potted up in there. So pretty. I love the Bowotii albo, and it is a really fast grower, actually. It is a pretty thin leaf Hoya as well. So this I will take over to the sink and water through with Super Thrive, and I'm going to pot up the other Propagation as well. Let me put that back here. Here's the other one. Okay, voila! And now that one's potted up as well, and we'll water this one through with Super Thrive too. Super easy. Ma'am, what are you doing? Hi, are you saying hi? Are you helping? Did you come up to check in, Miss Supervisor? Make sure everything was getting done? You want to say hi? Say hi. Say hi, people. And there you have it. Look at all of our Hoya propagations. Oh my goodness. And these Halloween themed prop pins are so stinking cute. Like if I was at a Halloween themed plant market and just shopping, I would buy these because of the prop pins alone. Like they're also awesome Hoyas, but I love everything Halloween. Halloween's my favorite holiday, so I'm super excited about that. But that's really it. It's pretty straightforward. I don't think it's too challenging. My potting method, whether it's been water rooted or if you're potting straight into the substrate, is all the same. I've also potted propagations without rooting hormone. Actually, while I was potting some of these up, I forgot to do the rooting hormone part for some of these. So I'll keep an eye on these and see if there's a major difference. But I've also done Hoya propagations straight into my Hoya mix without the rooting hormone, and they did totally fine as well. But yeah, it's pretty straightforward. Fluval is pretty straightforward as well. I personally love Fluval because it's really simple. Like all you have to do is pot it up, and then once it's in there, you keep adding water and just make sure that there's always water in the cup, and you can see the water levels through a clear cup on the side. But I personally love Fluval. I feel that it roots the fastest in Fluval, and because of that high nutrient substrate, it just makes them explode, you know what I mean? Plus it's really good for transitioning to a semi-hydro substrate. So that's why I love Fluval. But if I'm propagating Hoya, my true and tried way is to put it right into my Hoya mix substrate, especially if it's a Hoya that I know I'm going to take to market and that I'm going to sell. That way it's ready to go. It roots where it's going to stay for a long while. You don't have to change anything about it or, you know, move it up in size because it's going to take a little while to really fill out to the pots that they're in. So it's really convenient not only for me and to make them look cute with these prop pins, but also for someone who is going to take this new Hoya baby home. They can actually leave them in this setup for a while until it gets pretty root bound, and then they can either upsize it, or if they want to transition it, you absolutely can. You would just need to rinse off all of the substrate and either put it in water for a little while, put it in Fluval for a little while, and get it transferred over to semi-hydro if that's your preference. But these are my favorite methods for rooting, and water as well, but there's not too much for me to show you with water propagating because you just take the cutting and put it in a cup of water. So that one is self-explanatory. But that's it for this. So now, tips and tricks to help these babies thrive while they are going through their rooting process. Now, as I mentioned, rooting takes about 2 to 3 weeks, maybe a little longer, but usually around the 2 or 3 week mark is when I start to see roots. And why I always use clear containers is so that I can see roots start to develop on the side of the cup. So that's what I'll be monitoring for. The number one tip I can give you to help these Hoya propagations thrive once they've been potted up like this anyway. If they're water propagating, they can just stay up in your water propagation stations. But if they're in Fluval or if they're getting potted directly into their substrate, the number one thing I could tell you is high light and high humidity. These are a little tall, so I'm going to remove these for just a sec. But what I like to do when I've potted up new Hoya propagations is keep them in a 1020 tray. The pink tray here is called a 1020 tray, and it comes with a big dome like this. And so this is a dirty dome. I will need to wipe that down. So what I will do is I will keep my propagations in an enclosed dome, and they have two little wheels at the top to control airflow. I put it at 100% humidity. Now, this is not a super secure or sealed tray here, so it won't really be a true 100% humidity. There will be some airflow here, but for the first 2 weeks, I will keep them completely enclosed like this. And I actually keep my 10-20 trays on my shelf here. My bottom two rows down here that you can't see are actually where I keep 10-20 trays of stuff that's propagating and growing. And I have Barina T5 lights all hung up on this shelf. So this will go down there in that area. So that will boost up the humidity inside, which will really help the rooting process. And then it's directly under a Barina T5 light. Now, you don't have to do this. You can skip this step. If you don't have 10-20 trays, you could use any sort of container. I've used the plastic shoebox containers or the plastic storage bins that you can get from like Amazon or Target. I've even gone to the dollar store and gotten like Tupperware containers before and kept propagations in there enclosed just to boost the humidity, or I'll keep them in my cabinets. I have one specific cabinet. It is weather stripped on the sides. It's a Bagabo IKEA shelf cabinet thing, but I've weather stripped the entire thing, and it also has Barina lights inside that are just smaller. I think they're like 3 inch or something. Not 3 inch, 2 feet or something. And it gets the most humidity of all my cabinets because it is so secure. So it gets up to like 90% humidity. Temperatures range from like 80 to 85, sometimes in 70 if I keep it open. And so if I'm propagating like lone items, like not in bulk like this, I'll actually keep it in that cabinet. And the light and the humidity really helps it do well. I'm gonna take this off so you can look at how cute these propagations are. The other recommendation or the tip that I can give you once these are potted up is to make sure that they stay moist. Now, I don't mean sopping wet, but you don't want them to dry out, at least not while they're rooting, in my opinion. So what I'll do, especially if they're in an enclosed dome like this, where the humidity is high, it's actually going to stay really moist, so you don't have to water too often. If I keep this in a dome, I will check them once a week, like physically lift the bin off so that they get some oxygen, some airflow in there, and to also see how moist the substrate is. In a week, if it's still super moist, I'm going to leave it alone. But after about 2 weeks, I'm going to go ahead, take it to the sink, water it through completely, put it back in here, cover it up again, and let it do its thing. Next thing that is not necessary, but if you would like to introduce a fertilizer to these, you can. I would wait until you start to see some root production, and you don't want to do too much or too strong of a fertilizer right away, so that you don't shock the plant or burn the plant as well. Just make sure it's a very gentle fertilizer, I guess. I just mix that in. It's like a very small amount that you mix in with a gallon of water, and I add silica to all my waterings to help the resiliency of the plants. I'm going to do a video on watering and fertilizer and all that stuff, so stay tuned for that. But I would introduce that after you start to see some root production. So if you're keeping the plant, like I'm going to sell these, so I may not do any fertilizer to them since the plant market is coming up in a couple of weeks. But if I were to keep these and I wanted to get them on a fertilizer, I would slowly introduce it at a very low dose and then work my way up to whatever full dose that you follow. If you don't want to include fertilizer, you don't have to. That is just an added thing, and it's not necessary, but a thing that you could do. And I think that covers everything. I hope I'm not missing anything. If you have any questions, please throw them down in the comments below. I would love to dialogue with you and chat more about this process with you. If there are tips and tricks that you have for me or different methods that you like that are successful for you, also share that down in the comments because I always want to learn and grow and see what other people are doing to keep it interesting, you know? Like, I know with Hoyas, a lot of people will propagate those in like perlite, like just perlite. Some people will propagate straight into pon, which I've never done with Hoyas. So I'm interested to see if anyone does some of those things. Definitely throw it down there so we can continue to learn and grow together as always. And yeah, I guess that's it. Thank you so much for tuning in to this video. I hope that it was helpful. I hope that, if anything, it was just a fun, cozy video for you to feel inspired and try something new with your own collection. And I can't wait to see you in the next one. Bye!